They didn't yell. They didn't accuse. They just didn't invite me. It started with a group message. I wasn't in a dinner. Mom's birthday. Saturday at Wilson's Grill, the nice one near the river. Family only. I found out from my younger brother Caleb. He sent a text like it was nothing. Hey, just so you know, Mom's dinner this weekend is kind of just for close family. Hope that's okay? Close family. I stared at the words for longer than I care to admit. I tapped out a reply, then deleted it. Typed again, deleted again. Finally, I sent one line. Did you mean to leave me out? He never answered. Instead, my sister Emily did. 2 hours later, Emily, 2 years younger than me, lives in our hometown in Texas, divorced, 2 boys, teaches part-time as a classroom aide at the elementary school we both went to. Her reply, "Let's not make this about you, Ava." That was it. I didn't respond, not because I didn't have words. I had plenty. I just didn't see the point of using them on people who'd already decided I was too much, too far, too different. I am Ava Carter, 33. I co-founded PathSync, a logistics tech firm based in Denver. We build predictive routing systems to help cities and companies cut waste money fuel time. In the world I built, I'm seen, heard, needed. But in the world I came from, I'm a ghost with a last name they still use when it's convenient. So, no, I didn't beg, but I booked a flight because something about silence this loud, it asks to be answered. I left Texas when I was 21. No savings, just a laptop with a cracked hinge, 2 suitcases, and a one-way ticket to Denver. My father didn't say goodbye. My mother packed me a sandwich ham on wheat, no note. At the time, I told myself it was enough. I rented a shoebox studio above a bakery that opened at 4 a.m., slept on a borrowed futon, waited tables, took night classes in data modeling, wrote code in bus terminals and laundromats. For 3 years, I worked like the rent was due yesterday, which most days it was. Emily stayed. She married a man named Ryan, church boy. Strong chin, quiet smile. They had their first son when she was 25. Then another 2 years later. I sent baby gifts. Emily rarely replied, but Mom always thanked me for the onesies, the books, the Walmart gift cards. It was polite gratitude, not connection. I tried to come home that Christmas. They said the boys had flu, and it wasn't a good time. By 28, I co-founded PathSync with a former professor and a truck driver I met through an old roommate. We built our first model on free public data and borrowed servers. It broke constantly, but when it worked like nothing else. We saved one retailer $40,000 in fuel in a single quarter. That's when the calls started: investors, mayors, national carriers. We got featured in a quiet industry newsletter, then a louder one, then TechCrunch. Back home, they still thought I was in computers. When people asked my dad said she does something with maps and machines, it's a little over my head. It always was. The year Emily divorced Ryan, she almost lost her car. Payments had lapsed, her credit was shot. She didn't tell anyone except Mom quietly one night on the phone. Mom told me I wired $8,000 that same evening. No one thanked me. Not officially, not in words, not even Emily. But a month later, she posted a picture on Facebook with the caption, "Starting fresh 1 mile at a time. God is good." No tag, no text. But there was the car, same license plate, paid off. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. Not in me, in them. I hadn't been disowned. Not exactly. Just deleted quietly, piece by piece, and the first hand to press delete had been the one I helped the most. Emily. Monday morning came like most do, early, quiet, too much coffee. At PathSync, we start the week with stand-ups at 6:45 a.m. No fluff, just clarity. We operate lean even now, especially now. After the meeting, Tara from HR caught me near the elevator. Your noon onboarding session has 5 new hires. One of them is from Texas, actually. Lucas Hayes. I paused. The name was familiar, but only faintly like hearing a song you used to hum as a child but haven't thought of in decades. Then it clicked. Lucas, Emily's boyfriend, the one who showed up in her holiday photos last year wearing flannel and a quiet smile. The one the family called solid, sweet, safe. Safe men are favored where I come from. Tara handed me the packet. He's junior data analytics background in civil engineering pivoted to systems modeling last year. I walked into the onboarding room 15 minutes later. 5 fresh faces, fresh haircuts, nervous posture. One of them flinched ever so slightly when I said, "Good morning, I'm Ava Carter, co-founder and COO. Welcome to PathSync." Lucas. His jaw tensed. His pen hovered in the air. He didn't say a word for the next 30 minutes. After the session, as the others filed out to meet with HR, he lingered. "Miss Carter, Ava," he said. "Ava's fine. Unless you plan on making the onboarding difficult," I said, almost smiling. He laughed, nervous hands in pockets. I didn't realize it was you. Emily never mentioned you ran the company. She doesn't mention me much at all." He nodded slowly. "I guess I didn't connect the dots." I waited. "Is it weird that I'm here?" he asked. "Working for you, I mean." "Only if you make it weird." That seemed to lift a weight off his shoulders. "Okay, cool. I mean, I really wanted this job. You all are doing amazing work. Then focus on that," I said, "and you'll be fine." He smiled, genuine this time, not performative. As he walked out, I felt something shift. Not in him, in me. Someone from their world had stepped into mine, and for the first time, didn't look away. It was Thursday when the post went up. Emily's Facebook public, no tags, just a photo of Mom smiling, wide cheeks pink, framed by gold balloons that read 60. The caption read, "Can't wait to celebrate this beautiful woman this Saturday. Family is everything." I stared at it longer than I meant to. There were 38 comments within an hour. Cousins, church friends, old neighbors, so proud of her. All the sisters together again. Sarah's bringing the apple pie. I scrolled through them like I was watching a window close. No mention of me. Not even a quiet wish you were here. No one asked where the firstborn daughter was. I wasn't forgotten. I was erased. There's a difference. Forgetting is passive accidental, but eraser. Eraser takes intention. Silence sharp enough to cut. I closed the app, pushed the phone away. Sat there for a while. The kind of stillness that feels heavier than noise. Then I stood up, walked to my closet, pulled out the charcoal suit, pressed it myself. I booked the flight that night, not out of spite, not to make a scene. I just needed them to see. Not a resume, not a headline. Me, not who they remember who I actually became. They didn't ask me to come, but I wasn't going to let absence tell the story this time. Texas smelled the same as it always had, like fresh-cut grass, cedarwood, and air heavy with memory. I checked into a modest hotel just past the town limits. No frills, no chatter, just a clean bed, a working lamp, and silence I didn't have to earn. I answered a few messages, steamed my suit, and placed the envelope on the nightstand. White paper. No markings, just wait. Inside were 2 first-class tickets to Montana. My mother once said she wanted to see Glacier National Park before her knees gave out. She'd said it in passing 30 years ago over a cracked mug and store-brand coffee. I remembered. I always remembered. Wilson's Grill hadn't changed since my high school graduation dinner. Same red awning, same host with the pocket square, same piano cover looping in the background. I arrived a little after 7. The hostess blinked when I gave my name, looked down. The list hesitated, then gestured gently. Back room to the left, private party. The laughter reached me first, silverware tapping glasses clinking, the uneven rhythm of people who hadn't thought about who might be missing. Then I stepped in. My mother was at the center of a long table, radiant in emerald green, framed by cousins, neighbors, old friends. Her smile looked earned. Next to her sat my father, arms crossed like a man posing for a portrait. Emily sat to her left, her boys fidgeting, cheeks flushed with sugar. And at the far end near the window, Lucas silent watching. The room didn't stop all at once. It paused in pieces. One cousin glanced up. An uncle froze mid-bite. The murmur dimmed until there was nothing but ambient tension. Then came the voice I expected, louder than necessary and exactly in character. "Well," my father said with a half-smirk look, who decided to join us. I didn't answer, didn't even look his way. Instead, I walked to my mother, steady, unhurried. I leaned down, placed the envelope gently on the table in front of her. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said. "I hope it's as beautiful as you are." She looked confused at first, as if my presence had come without warning or precedent. Her hands hovered before picking up the envelope, cautious, like it might dissolve. When she opened it, her fingers trembled. Her breath caught. The silence grew denser. She looked up at me, eyes wide-mouthed, forming a question she didn't voice. Just one word made it out: Montana. I nodded. You once said you'd never been. I thought it was time. She swallowed hard tears, brimming but not falling. Her hand reached out not to grab, but to anchor. And from the other side of the table, my father exhaled in that way he does when he's uncomfortable but wants control. Still, love making an entrance, don't you? Always have to turn it into your show. The words didn't sting. Not this time, because the room wasn't only looking at him anymore. The silence didn't break. It shifted. Not shattered like glass, but bent like heat. Uneasy, visible, hard to name. My mother held the envelope in both hands like it might slip through her fingers. Her lips parted again, but no words came. Not yet. Across the table, Emily's fork rested awkwardly on her plate, untouched since I'd walked in. Her boys squirmed beside her, sensing what adults refused to say. And then there was Lucas, still seated at the far end, one hand around his water-glass knuckles pale. He was watching me, not confused, not shocked, just waiting. My father, unfazed, took a sip of wine, cleared his throat like he was getting ready to toast. Nice gesture, he muttered. Still prefer postcards myself. It was the kind of line that once would have drawn a laugh, a polite one at least. This time no one moved. Then Lucas stood, not abruptly, not like a man fueled by drama. He simply rose, straightened his collar, and looked straight at my father. She didn't make this about herself, he said, voice steady. Clear. You did. My father blinked. A cousin leaned slightly forward. Lucas didn't look away. That's Ava Carter, he continued, co-founder and COO of PathSync, one of the fastest-growing AI logistics companies in the Rockies. She's not just impressive, she's respected. She's fair, and she's the reason I took this job. Now every head turned, some toward me, some toward Emily, whose face had flushed a shade paler. Lucas glanced at her, then back at the room. I applied months ago, before I ever connected the name. And when I realized who she was, I was proud. I still am. The silence in the room shifted again. This time it leaned. He wasn't finished. You talk about family like it's something that never changes, but real family evolves, learns, includes. Ava didn't walk away. You pushed her out, and even then she built something the rest of us now benefit from, including me. He sat down. No applause, no affirmations, just the weight of his words settling like dust in sunlight. I looked at my mother. Her eyes hadn't left me. Her hands still rested on the envelope like it was a lifeline. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. I turned to Emily. She didn't look back. She was staring into her water jaw-locked lips thin. The boys beside her didn't ask what was happening. They already knew. My father was still not stiff, not angry, just still. And for the first time in my life, I saw him without the armor. No role to play. No sarcasm to hide behind. Just a man staring at something he'd spent years pretending wasn't there. I reached for my bag, rose from my seat. I won't stay long, I said quietly to my mother. I just wanted to see you smile. She reached up, squeezed my hand with both of hers. You did, she whispered. As I turned to leave, my heels echoed against the tile. Not loud, but unmistakable. No one followed. No one called my name. And that was fine, because this time I wasn't leaving in silence. I was leaving seen. That night, I didn't cry. I took off my heels, ordered grilled chicken from room service, and opened my laptop. The second quarter forecast was steady. Our new routing models were outperforming expectations, and 2 municipal contracts had just cleared legal. On paper, everything was fine. At 9:40 p.m., the hotel phone rang. The front desk clerk said there was a woman asking for me, said her name softly. My mother. She arrived holding a plastic container wrapped in a dish towel. Inside were pecan bars, her signature. Uneven edges, cracked sugar tops, soft and sweet, and utterly hers. She lingered at the door, unsure if she was allowed in. I let her. She looked around the room like she was seeing a piece of me for the first time. Said something quiet about how I always liked clean spaces. I replied she always liked sugar. We both smiled. Not wide, not warm, just enough. We didn't mention the dinner. Not yet. Instead, we talked about Montana. I described the trip small quieter built for watching mountains instead of shopping. She asked more questions than I expected about the company, my team, the work. She wasn't just filling space, she was trying. Eventually, her hands folded in her lap. Her voice dropped. She said she hadn't realized how much I'd been carrying all these years. I told her no one had asked. She nodded, not to argue, but to accept. Said they'd tried to keep me small because it made me easier to understand. She called that a mistake. I didn't rush to forgive, but I didn't push her away either. She asked if she could visit Denver sometime. I said yes. 4 days later, my phone buzzed with Emily's name. I hesitated, answered. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Just said she wasn't sure why she called, or maybe she did. Lucas had told her everything, not just what he said at the party, but how he described me afterward. How I carried myself led, showed grace under fire. It shook her. She admitted she had never thought of me as someone strong, just someone stubborn. Said my leaving had always felt like abandonment, but now she wondered if it had been survival. I let her speak. I let the silence fill the space between her realizations. She told me she used to resent me for changing while she stayed still. It made her feel small. I told her she wasn't small, just still becoming. She exhaled like letting go of something she didn't know she was holding. Said Mom wanted to visit me, then added softly that maybe she did too. I said they were both welcome. Right before she hung up, her voice caught again. She told me she was proud of me not just for succeeding, but for never making her feel less, even when she had tried to make me feel invisible. When I returned to Denver that Friday, the hotel had left an envelope for me at the front desk. No return address, just my name in my father's handwriting firm, exact, unmistakable. Inside, a single page. He wrote that I turned out different than he expected, maybe even better. Said he didn't know how to apologize for the ways he'd underestimated me, that perhaps he didn't deserve to. But Mom had told him I was building something real. He said he believed her. And then this, you always had that stubbornness. I mistook it for rebellion. Turns out it was vision. No signature, no warmth, but no denial. And for a man like him, maybe that was all he could give. Maybe that was enough. That summer, I bought my first home in Boulder County. It sat at the edge of the pines, sunlit quiet, overlooking a curve of the valley where the water turned silver at dusk. The floors creaked in the right places. The air smelled like sage and earth. It wasn't grand, it was enough. On move-in day, the team surprised me with a gift. A framed canvas print, deep blue with white lettering. A quote I'd said once during a late-night planning session, half laughing, half exhausted, build so well they can't look away. It hung above my desk now. Just beneath it, in a smaller frame, was a yellow Post-it note slightly curled at the edges, ink smudged at the corner. On it, written in Lucas's careful handwriting, were 4 words. She's my boss. I never asked who saved it. I just knew it mattered. Not because it proved anything, but because it came from someone who had once been on the other side of the story and chose to speak up. The real story wasn't that I showed up. It's that I stayed steady long enough for the silence to collapse on its own. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to reclaim a seat at the table. I built a better one, then left the door unlocked. 5 years later, when my mother turned 65, we celebrated on my patio under string lights and soft jazz. Emily brought the pie. Lucas ran the slideshow. My father sat in the corner, quiet but present, watching. As the evening faded into dusk, he approached me, hands in his pockets, eyes soft with something between memory and apology. He didn't say much, just handed me an old photo me at age 10, building a company out of shoeboxes and tape, Smart Moves ink scrolled in red marker. On the back, he'd written, "Turns out you always knew." We stood there a while, not as enemies, not quite as family, just as people finally seeing each other. I didn't come back to be forgiven. I came back so no one could say I disappeared. Not again. I didn't need to be welcomed back. I just needed the truth to stay in the room after I left. Have you ever returned not for forgiveness, but to prove you never left? If this spoke to something you've held in for years, just leave one word below. We'll understand. Ava Carter learns that her worth isn't defined by her family's acceptance, but by the strength she builds through her own choices. Excluded from her mother's birthday, she confronts the painful erasure by her family, who see her ambition as detachment. Instead of seeking forgiveness or forcing her way back, Ava shows up uninvited not to prove a point, but to reclaim her presence. Her gift of Montana tickets, rooted in a quiet memory of her mother's dream, reveals her capacity to love without demanding reciprocation. Nathan's unexpected defense at the dinner, calling her respected and fair, shifts the narrative, exposing her family's misjudgments. Ava realizes that her success at PathSync, built through years of grit, isn't just professional triumph, but a testament to her resilience against their dismissal. Her mother's visit, Emily's call, and her father's letter show that her steady presence, not loud demands, prompts their reflection. Ava's lesson is that true validation comes from within, from building a life so undeniable that it forces others to see you not as they wish, but as you are. She doesn't need their table. She's built her own, leaving the door open for those ready to see her truth.
The tension at Sunday dinner had been building for 45 minutes. Ever since I'd walked through the front door of my childhood home carrying my laptop bag. Mom had immediately launched into her usual routine of worrying about my unconventional lifestyle, while Dad had spent the first course grumbling about how I dressed too casually for a 30-year-old professional. "Look at your sister," Mom said, gesturing toward Jessica, who sat perfectly composed in her business suit despite it being Sunday evening. "She's got a real career, a real salary, benefits. She's building something stable." Jessica smiled, that practiced smile she'd perfected during her MBA program. "The pharmaceutical industry offers excellent growth opportunities, Alex. I could probably get you an interview in our IT department. It's still computers, but it's legitimate work." I pushed my mashed potatoes around my plate, trying to remember why I'd agreed to family dinner after avoiding it for the past 2 months. Nothing had changed. To them, I was still the family disappointment who dropped out of law school to mess around with computers, instead of pursuing a respectable career. "An IT department job would be perfect," Dad chimed in, warming to the subject. "Regular hours, steady paycheck, room for advancement. You could finally move out of that basement apartment and get your life together." "I like my apartment," I said quietly. "It's a basement," Mom exclaimed. 30 years old and you're living like a college student. When I was your age, I already owned a house." Dad set down his fork with more force than necessary. "That's what I'm talking about. No direction, no ambition. Just sitting in that basement all day playing video games." "I don't play video games, Dad. I work." "Work." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What you do isn't work, Alex. Work is what your sister does. Work is what I did for 35 years at the bank. Work is showing up somewhere every day, contributing to society, earning an honest living." I felt the familiar knot forming in my stomach. 3 years of building quantum solutions from nothing, 3 years of 18-hour days and sleepless nights, 3 years of turning down social events to focus on code and client meetings, and they still saw it as playing around. "Maybe if you explained what you actually do," Jessica suggested with that condescending tone she'd mastered in business school. "I mean, besides the computer stuff." "I run a software development company," I said for what felt like the 100th time. "We create custom solutions for businesses that need specialized technology infrastructure." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Buzzwords. That's all I ever hear from you. Buzzwords and technical jargon. If it was a real business, you'd be able to explain it in plain English." "I've tried explaining it. You just don't want to listen." "Don't get smart with me," Dad snapped. "I'm trying to help you see reality. You're 30 years old, Alex. 30. Do you know what I'd accomplished by 30? A house, a wife, 2 kids, and a promotion to assistant manager," I recited. It was a speech I'd heard countless times. "Exactly. And what do you have? A basement apartment and a computer." Mom reached across the table to pat my hand. "Sweetheart, we're just worried about you. This computer phase has gone on for so long and you have nothing to show for it." "Phase." I pulled my hand away. "It's been 3 years, Mom. It's not a phase." 3 years of failure," Jessica added helpfully. "At some point you have to cut your losses and move on." I looked around the table at my family. The same people who used to brag about my straight A's, my academic scholarships, my early acceptance to law school. Now they looked at me like I was a disappointment they had to tolerate out of obligation. "Stop playing with computers and get a real job," Dad shouted across the table, his voice echoing off the dining room walls. "You're 30 and still acting like a child." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because they were particularly harsh, I'd heard worse from him, but because of how dismissive they were. 3 years of building something from nothing and he still saw it as child's play. Before I could respond, the sound of breaking news music came from the living room TV. Mom had left it on low volume as background noise, but now the urgent tone caught everyone's attention. "We interrupt your regular programming for breaking news," the anchor's voice carried clearly from the next room. "What now?" Dad muttered, but Jessica was already reaching for the remote to turn up the volume. The news anchor appeared on screen, looking appropriately serious. "Good evening. We're following breaking news about what's being called the largest technology acquisition in our city's history. Mercury Financial, one of the region's biggest banking institutions, has just announced a partnership deal worth $200 million with a local software company for a complete overhaul of their digital infrastructure." My blood went cold. Mercury Financial. The contract I'd been working on for 8 months, the one that would make or break Quantum Solutions. The deal I hadn't told my family about because I couldn't bear the thought of their reactions if it fell through. $200 million? Jessica whistled low. "That's serious money." Dad was shaking his head. "Probably one of those Silicon Valley companies coming in to take over local businesses. Mark my words, it'll be some outfit from California with more money than sense." The anchor continued. "The partnership will revolutionize how Mercury Financial handles everything from customer transactions to internal data management. The software company Quantum Solutions has been working closely with Mercury's leadership team for the past year to develop what experts are calling the most advanced banking platform in the region." The fork slipped from Jessica's hand, clattering onto her plate. "Did they just say Quantum Solutions?" I couldn't speak. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Mercury's CEO Robert Harrison called the partnership transformational and praised Quantum Solutions' innovative approach to solving complex financial technology challenges, the anchor was saying. The company, founded just 3 years ago, has quickly established itself as a leader in custom software development. Dad was staring at the TV with his mouth slightly open. "Wait a minute. Quantum Solutions, isn't that the name of your little?" Before he could finish the sentence, my phone rang. Not the polite buzzing I usually kept it on during family dinners, but the full ring volume I'd forgotten to turn down. And it wasn't just ringing, it was set to speaker mode from my last conference call. The caller ID lit up the screen clearly enough for everyone at the table to read. Robert Harrison, Mercury Financial CEO. Time seemed to freeze. 4 pairs of eyes stared at my phone as it rang a second time, then a third. I knew I should answer it, knew Robert was probably calling to discuss the press release, but I couldn't move. "Are you going to answer that?" Mom whispered. On the 4th ring, I finally reached for the phone, but my hand was shaking so badly I accidentally hit the speaker button while trying to answer. "Alex." Robert Harrison's booming voice filled the dining room. "I hope you're watching the news, my friend. We did it. The board unanimously approved the full package. $200 million for the complete implementation, plus the performance bonuses we discussed." I tried to speak but no words came out. "Alex, you there? Don't tell me you're speechless. This is the biggest tech deal in the city's history, and it's all because of your brilliant work." I'm here, Robert," I managed to croak out. "Outstanding. Listen, I know it's Sunday evening, but I had to call. The press conference went perfectly and the board wants to fast-track everything. We're talking about a complete digital transformation. Every system, every process, everything built on your platform." Dad was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had gone white. "That's wonderful news," I said, acutely aware that my entire family was hanging on every word. "Wonderful. Alex, this is career-defining stuff. You've created something revolutionary here. The efficiency improvements alone are going to save us millions annually, and the security features are unlike anything we've seen." Robert's enthusiasm was infectious, even through my shock. "We've worked hard to get it right." "Hard? You've been practically living at our offices for the past 8 months. The dedication you've shown, the attention to detail, it's exactly why we knew you were the right choice for this partnership." Jessica was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. I have to ask, Robert continued, and I know we discussed this briefly before, but the board wants to know if Quantum Solutions would be interested in an exclusive contract for our expansion into other markets. We're talking about taking your platform national, Alex. Potentially 20 to 30 additional financial institutions. I felt like I was going to pass out. That would be incredible. Incredible is right. We're looking at potentially tripling your current contract value over the next 3 years. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let's celebrate this victory. Are you free tomorrow morning? I'd like to set up a meeting with our executive team to discuss the implementation timeline. Of course, whatever works for your schedule. Excellent. Oh, and Alex, I hope you don't mind, but I mentioned your name specifically in the press conference. The reporters were very interested in learning more about the genius behind the technology. You might be getting some calls. The line went quiet for a moment and I realized Robert was waiting for a response. That's fine, I said. Thank you for the opportunity, Robert. Thank you. Alex, you've revolutionized our entire operation. I should be thanking you. Anyway, I'll let you get back to your evening. Congratulations again, my friend. You've earned every bit of this success. The call ended, leaving my dining room in complete silence except for the continued news coverage from the living room. In related news, the anchor was saying, Quantum Solutions founder Alex Morgan has been named one of the city's top young entrepreneurs by the Chamber of Commerce. The company, which Morgan started 3 years ago, now employs over 50 people and has contracts with several major corporations beyond Mercury Financial. Dad slowly looked from the TV to me, then back to the TV. 50 employees? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mom was shaking her head in disbelief. Alex, did that man just say $200 million? For the initial contract, yes. Initial contract? Jessica's voice came out as a squeak. There are several other projects in development, I said quietly. The news had moved on to other stories, but nobody was paying attention anymore. Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You own a company with 50 employees, he said slowly as if testing how the word sounded. 53 as of last week. And Mercury Financial just paid you $200 million. It's a 3-year contract. But yes. Mom was crying now, though I wasn't sure if it was from shock or something else. But you live in a basement apartment. Because I like it there. It's quiet and it's close to the office. I own the building. That revelation hit the table like a bomb. You own the building? Jessica repeated weakly. I bought it 2 years ago when the previous owner was looking to sell. It made sense as an investment and it gave me control over my living situation. Dad was rubbing his temples. How many buildings do you own? Just the one residential property. But Quantum Solutions owns our office building downtown, and we're looking at purchasing another one for expansion. The questions came rapid fire after that. How long had I been working with Mercury Financial? 8 months of intensive collaboration, 2 years of smaller projects before that. How many other clients did we have? 12 major contracts, dozens of smaller ones. Why hadn't I told them about any of this? Because every time I tried to talk about work, I got lectured about getting a real job. But the way you dress, Mom said weakly. The old car, the basement apartment. You look like you're struggling. I dress comfortably because I work long hours and I don't need to impress anyone with designer clothes. The car runs perfectly fine. I don't see the point in buying something expensive just to prove I can afford it. And I've explained about the apartment. Jessica was scrolling through her phone frantically. There's an article here from 6 months ago about rising tech companies in the region. Quantum Solutions is listed as one of the top 3 fastest-growing businesses in the city. She held up her phone, showing a photo of me at what was apparently a Chamber of Commerce event. I was wearing a suit and receiving some kind of award. When was this taken? Dad asked. March, I think. At the annual business recognition dinner. You never mentioned winning an award. I shrugged. You never asked about my work. You just told me to get a real job. The silence that followed was the heaviest I'd ever experienced in that dining room. Dad was staring down at his plate. Mom was still crying quietly, and Jessica looked like she was trying to solve a complex mathematical equation in her head. Finally, Dad looked up at me. Alex, I owe you an apology. Dad. No, let me say this. I've been completely wrong about you, about what you've been doing. I thought you were wasting your life, throwing away your potential. But you were building something incredible and I was too stubborn to see it. Mom reached for my hand again and this time I didn't pull away. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. We've been horrible to you. You weren't horrible. You were worried. I understand that. Worried. Jessica laughed, but it was a hollow sound. We've been treating you like a failure for 3 years, and you've been more successful than any of us. The news had cycled back to the Mercury financial story, and now they were showing footage from the press conference. Robert Harrison was at a podium, and behind him was a large screen displaying the Quantum Solutions logo. That's your company logo, Mom said softly as if she couldn't quite believe it. Yeah. It's beautiful. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, watching as Robert praised our partnership and outlined Mercury Financial's plans for the future. When they showed a brief video about Quantum Solutions offices, with shots of our development team working on the banking platform, I heard Dad draw in a sharp breath. That's a serious operation, he said. We've worked hard to build it. Where did you learn to do all this? You were in law school. I taught myself programming in high school, kept studying it in college even though I was pre-law. When I left law school, I already had the technical skills. I just needed to learn the business side. And you did that on your own? I had help. Mentors, advisors, other entrepreneurs who were willing to share their experience. There's a whole community of people who support each other in this industry. Dad was shaking his head again. 3 years. You built all this in 3 years. Well, I had some advantages. No family to support, low overhead, and I was willing to work constantly. The first year was brutal, 18-hour days, 7 days a week. But it was worth it. Jessica set down her phone. Alex, I need to ask you something and I want you to be honest. Okay. How much is your company worth? I hesitated. The valuation question was complicated and I wasn't sure I wanted to get into the details. It's hard to say exactly. We've had some preliminary discussions with investors who think we could be worth anywhere from 50 to 80 million, but we're not looking to sell. The number hit the table like another bombshell. 50 to 80 million? Mom whispered. Those are just estimates. The real value is in the long-term contracts and the technology we've developed. Dad was quiet for a long moment, then he said, Alex, I need you to know something. I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, but I was too proud and too stupid to admit I was wrong. I know you were trying to protect me. No, he said firmly. I was trying to control you. There's a difference. I wanted you to follow the path I understood, the safe path. But you chose the brave path, and you succeeded beyond anything I could have imagined. The conversation continued for another hour, with my family asking questions about everything from the technical aspects of what we did to the business challenges of running a growing company. For the first time in years, I felt like they were actually interested in my life rather than trying to fix it. When Jessica's phone rang with a call from her boyfriend, she answered it with obvious excitement. You need to turn on the news right now, she told him. My little brother just became the most successful person in our family. As the evening wound down, Mom insisted on making coffee so we could sit and talk more. Dad had found several more articles about Quantum Solutions online and was reading them with the same intensity he used to bring to bank reports. There's an interview here where you talk about your vision for the company, he said. You sound like you really know what you're doing. I hope so. We've got a lot of people depending on us now. 53 employees and their families, Mom said thoughtfully. That's a big responsibility. It is. But it's also an incredible opportunity to build something that matters. As I prepared to leave that night, Dad walked me to the door. Alex, I want you to know that I understand now why you stopped coming to family dinners. Dad. Every time you tried to talk about your work, I shut you down. I made you feel like your dreams were worthless. That must have been incredibly frustrating. It was hard, I admitted. But it also motivated me. Every time someone said I was wasting my time, I worked harder to prove them wrong. Well, you certainly did that. He paused, looking uncomfortable. I also want you to know that you're welcome here anytime. And from now on, I promise to listen when you talk about your work. I'd like that. And Alex, next Sunday, why don't you bring some of your team for dinner? I'd like to meet the people who helped you build this company. As I drove home through the quiet streets, my phone buzzed with messages from team members who had seen the news coverage. The Mercury Financial deal was huge for Quantum Solutions, but the real victory had happened at my family's dinner table. For 3 years I'd been building something meaningful while my family dismissed it as playing around. Tonight they finally saw what I'd been trying to show them all along. That sometimes the most important work happens in basements and late-night coding sessions, not in corporate offices with traditional career paths. The next morning brought a flood of interview requests from local business publications and tech industry blogs. But the message that meant the most came from my dad. Saw the article in the business section about your company. Saved 3 copies. Can't wait to show them to everyone at the bank. Proud of you, son. 6 months later, Quantum Solutions announced our expansion into 3 new markets, with total contracts worth over $500 million. We'd grown to over 100 employees and moved into a new headquarters downtown. But the success that mattered most to me had happened that Sunday evening, when my family finally understood that the computer stuff they'd dismissed was actually the foundation of something extraordinary. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't about proving people wrong. They're about giving them the chance to see you clearly for the first time. As I write this, we're preparing to launch our platform in 12 new cities, and Robert Harrison has become one of our biggest advocates, introducing us to financial institutions across the country. The basement apartment has been converted into my home office, though I've since bought a house in the hills overlooking the city. But every Sunday I still have dinner with my family. And now, instead of lectures about getting a real job, our conversations focus on the challenges and opportunities of building a technology company that's changing how financial institutions serve their customers. The computer phase, as they used to call it, turned out to be the foundation of everything I dreamed of building. And finally, my family was there to see it unfold. Standing in the decorated gymnasium of Lincoln High School, surrounded by classmates I hadn't seen in 20 years, I wondered why I'd bothered coming to the reunion at all. The same cliques had reformed as if no time had passed. The popular kids clustered around the makeshift bar, the athletes comparing stories about their glory days, and the academic overachievers discussing their corporate careers with practiced modesty. And then there was me, standing alone by the memorial table, wearing a simple black dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary but looked like something from a department store clearance rack. Exactly how I'd planned it. Morgan Sullivan, is that really you? I turned to find Brittany Michaels approaching, her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer outfit screaming expensive maintenance. She'd been head cheerleader, prom queen, and everything I'd never been in high school. Hi, Brittany. I managed to smile. You look great. Thanks. I just got back from a spa weekend in Napa. You know how it is. She looked me up and down with barely concealed pity. So, what have you been up to? I heard you moved back to town a few years ago. I did. I run a small business here now. Oh, that's nice. Local businesses are so important. What kind of shop do you have? Before I could answer, a booming voice interrupted us. Well. If it isn't little Morgan Sullivan. My stomach dropped. Jason Crawford stood behind me, flanked by 2 of his old football buddies, wearing the same smirk that had terrorized me through 4 years of high school. At 48 he'd gained weight and lost hair, but his eyes still held that cruel gleam I remembered too well. Jason, I said quietly. I heard you were back in town. Living in that little apartment above the bakery, right? Some things never change. He laughed and his friends joined in. Remember in senior year when I said you'd never amount to anything? Looks like I was right. A small crowd was gathering now, drawn by Jason's loud voice and the promise of drama. I recognized faces from my graduating class. Some sympathetic, others merely curious, a few clearly enjoying the show. Leave her alone, Jason, said a voice from the crowd. David Chin, who'd been in my chemistry class, stepped forward. We're not in high school anymore. Oh, I'm not being mean, Jason replied with false innocence. I'm just catching up with an old friend. Morgan here was always the smart one, right? Straight A's, academic scholarships, going to change the world. And look how that worked out. My face burned with humiliation, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd learned long ago not to give bullies the satisfaction of seeing they'd hurt me. So what happened, Morgan? Jason continued, warming to his audience. Too much pressure at that fancy college? Couldn't handle the real world? It's okay, not everyone's cut out for success. Actually, I said softly, college went fine. I graduated summa cum laude from Stanford with a degree in computer science. Jason waved dismissively. Sure, but that was 20 years ago. What have you done since? Because from what I hear, you're living like you did in high school, alone, broke, and going nowhere. The crowd was growing larger now, and I could see phones being pulled out to record what was clearly becoming this reunion's main entertainment. Some faces showed embarrassment at Jason's behavior, but no one else stepped forward to intervene. 20 years later and still a failure, Jason announced to the crowd, his voice carrying across the gymnasium. Some people never change. The words hit exactly as he'd intended them to. The same words he'd whispered to me on graduation day, promising that real life would prove he'd been right about me all along. For a moment I was 18 again, standing in the same gymnasium trying not to cry as he and his friends laughed at my dreams. But I wasn't 18 anymore. Before I could respond, the sound of feedback from the PA system cut through the noise. Everyone turned toward the small stage that had been set up at one end of the gym, where a microphone stand had been placed next to a table displaying old yearbooks and class photos. Good evening, everyone. Mayor Patricia Williams stepped up to the microphone, her voice echoing through the gymnasium. I hope you're all enjoying reconnecting with old friends and classmates. A polite round of applause rippled through the crowd. Mayor Williams had graduated 5 years ahead of us and had returned to Lincoln after a successful career in city planning. She was well liked and respected, known for her efforts to revitalize our small town's economy. Now, I know this isn't part of the official reunion program, she continued, but I couldn't let this evening pass without making a special announcement. As many of you know, our town has been working hard to attract new businesses and investment. We've been particularly focused on bringing technology companies to Lincoln, knowing that our future depends on innovation and economic diversification. I felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. I'd been working closely with the mayor's office for months on various initiatives, always careful to keep my involvement quiet and behind the scenes. Tonight, I want to publicly thank someone who has been instrumental in our town's economic transformation. Someone who has not only brought jobs and investment to Lincoln but has done so with a level of generosity and community spirit that exemplifies the best of our hometown values. Jason was still standing near me, but his attention had shifted to the mayor along with everyone else's. The gymnasium had grown quiet except for the mayor's voice and the occasional whisper. This person has chosen to work quietly without fanfare or recognition, but their impact on our community has been extraordinary. In the past 3 years alone, they've been responsible for bringing over 200 new jobs to Lincoln, investing millions of dollars in local infrastructure, and supporting dozens of small businesses through grants and partnerships. My heart was pounding. This wasn't supposed to happen. I'd specifically asked Mayor Williams to keep my involvement confidential. We're honoring our town's most successful entrepreneur, she continued, someone who left Lincoln 20 years ago with big dreams and has returned to make those dreams a reality for our entire community. The crowd was murmuring now, everyone looking around to see who the mayor might be talking about. I could hear people speculating about which of our classmates had achieved such success. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to join me in recognizing Morgan Sullivan, founder and CEO of Sullivan Technologies, whose company has generated over $3 billion in revenue and whose personal commitment to Lincoln has made her our town's greatest success story. The silence that followed was deafening. Every head in the gymnasium turned toward me. Phones that had been recording Jason's taunts were now focused on capturing my reaction. The crowd that had gathered to watch my humiliation was now staring in shock. Jason's mouth was hanging open. Brittany looked like she'd been slapped. David Chin was grinning broadly, but most faces showed the same expression of disbelief. Morgan, Mayor Williams called out, would you please join me up here? I felt like my legs might give out, but I forced myself to walk toward the stage. The crowd parted as I moved through them, whispers following in my wake. Many of you remember Morgan as a brilliant student who left Lincoln with a full scholarship to Stanford. The mayor continued as I climbed the steps to the stage. What you might not know is that she founded Sullivan Technologies in her dorm room and built it into one of the most successful software companies in the world. I stood next to Mayor Williams, looking out at my former classmates' stunned faces. Jason was still exactly where I'd left him, but his expression had changed from smug satisfaction to something closer to panic. Sullivan Technologies, the mayor went on, has developed the operating systems used by over 60% of the world's smartphones. Their cloud computing platform serves major corporations on every continent. But more importantly for us, Morgan has chosen to relocate her company's research and development division to Lincoln, bringing high-paying tech jobs to our community. The murmurs in the crowd were getting louder. I could see people frantically Googling on their phones, probably trying to verify what they were hearing. Morgan has also personally funded the renovation of our library, the new computer lab at the high school, and the small business incubator program that has helped launch 15 new companies in the past 2 years alone. Mayor Williams turned to me. "Morgan, would you like to say a few words?" I stepped up to the microphone, my mind racing. I'd spent 3 years carefully maintaining my anonymity, living quietly in my small apartment, driving my unremarkable car, shopping at the same local stores I'd frequented as a teenager. Now, in a matter of minutes, that carefully constructed cover was completely blown. "Thank you, Mayor Williams," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I have to admit, this wasn't how I planned to spend my reunion evening." A few nervous chuckles came from the crowd. When I left Lincoln 20 years ago, I was angry. Angry at people who told me I'd never succeed, angry at a town that felt too small for my dreams, angry at myself for caring so much about what others thought. I looked directly at Jason. I spent a lot of years trying to prove people wrong. Jason had gone pale. Several of his friends had quietly moved away from him. But somewhere along the way, I realized that success isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about building something meaningful and sharing it with others. When I decided to move my company's operations here, it wasn't about showing off or getting revenge. It was about coming home. I paused, scanning the faces in the crowd. Some showed genuine curiosity now, others embarrassment at their earlier assumptions. Lincoln shaped me in ways I didn't understand until I'd been gone for years. The values I learned here, hard work, integrity, community, those became the foundation of everything I built. This town made me who I am, and I wanted to give something back. "Morgan," someone called out from the crowd. It was Sarah Martinez, who'd been in my advanced placement classes. "Is it true that Sullivan Technologies is worth $3 billion? I nodded. The company's last valuation was actually closer to $4 billion. But the number isn't what matters. What matters is the work we do and the people whose lives we can impact." "But you live above the bakery," Brittany said, her voice confused. "You drive an old Honda. You shop at the grocery store like everyone else." "Because that's what I choose to do," I replied. "Money doesn't have to change how you live. It just gives you more options for how you help others live." Another voice from the crowd. "How many people do you employ?" "Globally, about 8,000. Here in Lincoln, we're up to 250, with plans to expand to 500 over the next 2 years. The questions kept coming. How had I built the company? Why had I kept it secret? What were my plans for the future? I answered each one as honestly as I could, watching as my former classmates processed this new reality. Finally, Mayor Williams stepped back to the microphone. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I hope you'll all join me in thanking Morgan for her incredible contributions to our community. And now, please enjoy the rest of your reunion." As the crowd began to disperse, some people approached to congratulate me or ask more questions. Others, clearly uncomfortable with having their assumptions so dramatically overturned, drifted away to other parts of the gymnasium. Jason was not among those who left. He stood frozen in the same spot where he'd been standing when he called me a failure, his face a mixture of humiliation and disbelief. His friends had long since abandoned him, leaving him alone in his expensive suit that suddenly looked shabby compared to what he now knew was in my bank account. I walked over to him, curious to see if he'd say anything. "Morgan, He started, then stopped, apparently unable to find words. "You what, Jason?" I had no idea. I mean, if I had known. "You would have what? Been nicer to me? Only bullied people you thought were beneath you." I shook my head. "That's not how kindness works. I thought." He was floundering, the confident bully completely gone. "In high school you were so quiet, so easy to pick on?" He flinched. "I was a kid. I didn't know better." "You're 48 years old, Jason. What's your excuse for tonight?" He had no answer for that. David Chin appeared at my elbow. "Morgan, I just wanted to say congratulations. And thank you for what you've done for the town. My cousin got one of the jobs at your company. It's changed his whole life." I'm glad to hear that, I said, grateful for the interruption. Also, David continued with a grin, I have to ask, was it satisfying? Watching Jason's face when the mayor made her announcement. I considered the question seriously. You know what? Really wasn't. I thought it would be, but mostly I just felt sad. Sad that someone could carry that much bitterness for 20 years. Jason was still standing there, clearly listening to every word. People change, David. Or at least they can choose to. I hope Jason makes that choice. I turned to leave, but Jason's voice stopped me. Morgan, wait. I looked back at him. I owe you an apology. Not just for tonight, but for high school. For all of it. You didn't deserve the way I treated you then, and you certainly didn't deserve what I said tonight. No, I didn't. He winced at my bluntness. Is there anything I can do to make up for it? I studied his face, looking for signs of genuine remorse versus damage control. Actually, yes. There is something you can do. Anything. Stop bullying people. Tonight proved you haven't outgrown it. Figure out why you feel the need to tear others down and fix it. Because if you don't, you're going to spend the rest of your life wondering what you might have accomplished if you'd spent half as much energy building yourself up as you did tearing others down. He nodded slowly. You're right. I'll work on that. I hope you do. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations with classmates who were suddenly very interested in reconnecting with me. Some were genuine, others were transparently opportunistic, but most fell somewhere in between. People who were honestly shocked by the revelation and trying to reconcile the quiet girl they remembered with the successful CEO standing before them. Sarah Martinez approached me near the end of the evening. Morgan, I have to ask, did you plan this? The timing, the mayor's announcement. I shook my head. Actually, no. I specifically asked Mayor Williams to keep my involvement quiet. I think she decided tonight was the right time to go public. Because of what Jason was doing? Probably. She's known me since I was a kid, and she's always been protective of people who can't defend themselves. But you could defend yourself, Sarah pointed out. You're probably one of the most powerful people in the state. Power and the ability to defend yourself aren't the same thing, I replied. I could have stopped Jason by revealing who I was, but that would have been using my success as a weapon. I prefer to use it as a tool. As the reunion wound down, I found myself standing in the parking lot, looking back at the gymnasium where so much of my story had begun. The same building where I'd felt so small and powerless now felt different, not because the building had changed but because I had. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Saw the news coverage online. Your identity is officially out. How do you want to handle the media requests? News coverage. I'd forgotten that people record everything now. By tomorrow, the story of the reunion revelation would probably be all over social media and local news. I typed back, let's set up a proper press conference for Monday. Time to tell the whole story on our terms. As I drove home through the quiet streets of Lincoln, past the businesses I'd helped fund and the buildings I'd helped renovate, I reflected on the evening's events. For 20 years, I'd carried the memory of Jason's cruelty and the fear that maybe he'd been right about me. Tonight that fear had finally died. But more importantly, I'd learned something about the nature of success that no business school could have taught me. Real success isn't about proving people wrong or getting revenge on those who doubted you. It's about building something meaningful and using your achievements to lift others up. Jason Crawford had spent 20 years of his life believing he'd been right about me. Tonight he'd learned he was wrong. But the real lesson wasn't about my success. It was about the cost of his bitterness. While I'd been building a company and changing the world, he'd been stuck in the same mindset that had made him cruel to a quiet girl in high school. The next morning brought exactly what I'd expected: phone calls from reporters, interview requests from business publications, and social media messages from classmates who wanted to reconnect. But it also brought something I hadn't expected. A handwritten note slipped under my apartment door. Morgan, it read, I meant what I said last night about changing. I've already signed up for anger management counseling. I know it's not enough, but it's a start. Thank you for giving me the chance to apologize. I smiled, folding the note carefully. Maybe people really could change after all. The press conference on Monday was well attended. I talked about Sullivan Technologies' plans for expansion in Lincoln, the importance of bringing tech jobs to small towns, and my vision for the company's future. But the question that stayed with me came from a young reporter who couldn't have been more than 25. Miss Sullivan, what would you say to people who feel like failures, who think they'll never amount to anything? I thought about that quiet, hurt 18-year-old girl who'd walked across the graduation stage 20 years ago, carrying Jason's cruel words like a weight in her chest. I'd tell them that other people's opinions of your potential are not facts, I said. They're just opinions, often based on limited information and personal biases. The only person who gets to decide what you're capable of is you. And success isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving yourself right. 5 years later, Sullivan Technologies employs over 800 people in Lincoln and has become one of the largest employers in the region. The company has launched a scholarship program for students interested in technology careers, and we've opened a coding boot camp that's already graduated 300 local residents into high-paying tech jobs. Jason Crawford now works as a counselor for at-risk youth, helping teenagers who are struggling with bullying and self-esteem issues. He's become one of our scholarship program's most effective advocates, speaking at schools about the importance of kindness and the dangers of letting bitterness control your life. And sometimes, late at night when I'm working in my home office overlooking the town I once couldn't wait to leave, I think about that reunion evening and the power of unexpected moments to change everything. Not because of what they reveal about our success, but because of what they teach us about who we choose to be when that success is tested. The quiet girl from Lincoln High School finally found her voice. It just took 48 years and $4 billion for everyone else to hear it.